Welcome back to another episode of Laugh Through It All. I'm your host, Tracy. Today we have a truly inspiring guest who brings light and laughter to a journey often filled with challenges, such as raising a child with autism. So sit back, relax, and get ready to be inspired by a mom who reminds us all to embrace the lighthearted moments in life. First of all, I guess I should mention that, you and I both work together. We're both special education teachers,
Yeah.
and that's what bonded us together
And
and
our joy of laughter.
our joy of laughter and silliness and boldness, frankness. I like to think that you and I are both people who will
It is
just
what it
say,
is.
that's right, say how we feel. And
100%.
that is exactly why I love you and why I wanted you to do this.
Yeah.
So we're here to talk about, you're raising a child with autism.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of want to talk about your journey with that first. If you can kind of take us from the beginning of when you found out, when he was diagnosed,
Yeah.
what
I mean,
signs that you saw.
truthfully, it kind of like starts way before he was diagnosed because I knew at a very young age. And like people didn't believe me. But I mean, you work with kids that have autism. So you see these little things. And I would have this little baby, and every room I walked in, he would look for a ceiling fan.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then as soon as the ceiling fan, and he would see it and he would just start cooing. And I'm like, right? Like you're just kind of like,
Yeah.
and I would tell people, and everybody would be like, oh, Allison, that's just all you know. Like it's just what you do.
Oh, that's
And
interesting.
then I kind of
Okay.
felt like, well, maybe I am crazy, right? Like maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. But it became very apparent, very obvious, early on. He was diagnosed super early. Even before
Over
diagnosis,
two, like before 2 years old.
yeah, he was diagnosed before too. I was taking him for a speech eval. The pediatrician recommended a speech eval, and it was funny. Do you ever see that show, The Doctors? It's like on during the day, and there's like doctors, and they talk about different medical stuff.
That's still on TV.
Well, I don't know if it's still on, but it was
I
on
don't
like
think
when he
so.
was younger.
Okay. Yes, I do remember it. Yes.
So I came upon this thing where it was like, oh, are you worried about your kid's speech? Watch The Doctors tomorrow. And I'm like, I'm watching The Doctors tomorrow, right? So like I record it, I come home, I'm excited, I'm watching it. And the whole episode is about, oh, everything's normal, everybody develops at different paces, don't worry. But then at the very end of it, it was like, but if you do have any of these things, and we had 3 of the 5 things, and I was like, oh, okay.
Okay. Yes. Then you're
And
like,
number one
okay.
was like they don't coo or babble. My son never babbled or cooed. He drools excessively. He always drooled excessively. There was so many things that there was 3 of 5 of them where I was like, oh, I guess I should keep that appointment. So first it was a diagnosis of speech and language, and then from there they were like, we really think he might have autism, and I was like, I agree. But again, everybody in my life was still telling me that I was crazy. Like I
Right.
didn't have anybody. The day we got the diagnosis, I remember my close friend, and I love her to death, called me. She knew I had the diagnosis coming up. And I was out on a walk, I walk every day, so kind of more mental health. So I'm out on my walk and thinking about the fact that we just got diagnosed. And she calls me, and I'm like, oh, like thinking, how nice, right? She's gonna call me and see how I'm doing. And she answers the phone. She's like, so did they calm you down and tell you everything was fine? And I'm like, no, he has autism. Like I was like, at what point is anybody going to listen to me? Like,
Sure.
it was very low, and I'm not blaming her. Like, she's a wonderful, lovely person, but she didn't know. Like, I just felt very alone at that point because I felt like I was the only one that was saying these things, and nobody was hearing me.
What about your family at that time? Even your husband,
Like,
your
even
husband.
my sisters were like, I remember my mom's like, yeah, they're calling. Like, I don't know why Allison won't give up on this autism thing. I'm like, oh my
Oh
goodness.
my goodness.
Like, and again, they're not bad people. They just,
Sure.
like didn't really know. And they're like, and that stigma of like, oh, they're not loving, oh, they don't interact. Like, that's what they still had as autism in their head. And they're like, well, he hugs everybody and he's always laughing. So he's fine.
But he wasn't talking,
No, he was not talking. He wasn't interacting really. Like,
and
I
they
could
didn't
have
see that.
conversation. He did not understand any words. Like I would have conversations about, oh, I bought him this and this for Christmas as he's sitting in my lap, and everyone's like, well, he's right there. I'm like, wait, he has what I'm saying. It's fine.
Right.
Yeah, he didn't know, but we did. He got diagnosed. In fact, the official diagnosis was actually one of the worst days ever because I was super pregnant with my daughter, 34 weeks pregnant.
Wow.
And I took him in for the eval, and I already knew we just needed the official diagnosis. The neurologist was very kind. And after he told me, like, yes, he diagnosed with Asperger's, which I know is no longer a thing, but back then that was his diagnosis. And then he like kind of pointed to my stomach and he's like, oh, how far are you? And I'm like, oh, 34 weeks. And he's like, boy or girl. And in my mind, I'm thinking like, oh, he's trying to make me feel better, like, think differently for a minute. And I'm like, I don't know. It's a surprise. He's like, oh, boy, probably same autism. I
What?
was just like, okay.
What in the world is wrong with people?
And then he left. And I was just sitting there in this room
Oh,
with my 2-year-old pregnant. And I'm like,
that is terrible.
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm like a state of shock. I don't
But
even
you have to laugh because,
answer
I
that.
mean, who says that?
That's exactly.
He's like, boy, probably same autism. And he had like a different dialect. So English wasn't his first language. But I was like,
Still?
okay.
Wow.
So here I am, just this young mom sitting in a room. And he's like, have a nice day. And
Yeah, peace. Enjoy.
right.
Enjoy this weather.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So that's how we got the diagnosis. And then I had to go to the OB. I had to appointments. I had to get in the car and go there. Yeah.
Lord have mercy.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't even have words. And that for me to me to not have words is
Oh, it was a lot
really
for
tough.
sure. Yeah, it was definitely a lot.
So then once you did get a diagnosis, did you kind of wait until then to take steps into, resources and things like that to try to
No,
provide?
we had already started speech a long time before that, and our speech therapist was wonderful. And she was like, you need to really start feeding therapy because he was like, he would throw up when he watched other people eat stuff he didn't like. He once threw up because Elmo ate some yarn spaghetti on TV. Not real.
I want to throw up sometimes when I see people. To-
I
in,
picture it, I forgot.
in Carson's defense.
No, so even before the diagnosis, he had speech, he had feeding, we did OT.
Okay.
So we did all that. We didn't wait for a diagnosis for that. We never did ABA. We looked into ABA. It was kind of a hard decision, which I feel more justified on now, which I don't know if you've seen the research of like the autistic community and how they feel about ABA, but they're very against it.
That was going to be one of my questions actually, is ABA, because there are definitely strong opinions on ABA.
And I've seen wonderful things as a teacher.
Sure.
I've seen kids leave and come back, and I'm like, I cannot even believe this is the same kid, right?
Agree. Totally agree.
But if it didn't feel right for us, and I just trusted like my mom instincts, and I was like, I just don't know. And I never 100% ruled it out for the future, but I was like, this isn't right for us right now. Like, I don't like this right now. And we never ended up going down that road. And now I follow a lot of different forums from our autism community, like autistic adults, and they're extremely against ABA.
Okay.
So they actually say it's a form of abuse.
Really? Because of what reason?
That instead of like finding who they are and teaching them how to be who they are, we're tricking them into trying to be neurotypical.
That makes so much sense though.
Right? So once you hear it from that perspective, I'm like,
Oh,
I feel much more justified in my
I
decision,
agree.
right? So it's kind of, I'm not all anti-ABA. If you feel like that's right for you, you do
Sure.
you. It wasn't right for us, and I'm really glad that we chose not to go that route.
I have seen where ABA goes in and helps teach parents how to work with the kids at home and bring structure and things like that. I have seen that be successful. So I
Yeah.
do know that that there are some avenues that could be successful, but I absolutely could see what you just said.
Yeah, like they're like, nobody's teaching us as children how to accept who we are and function as we are. They're saying like, be like us and we'll give you a treat. Be like us and we'll give you a treat.
Oh, Allison, that breaks my heart
Doesn't
thinking
it?
of it
When you
that
start
way.
thinking about it, you're like,
I mean, truly breaks my heart thinking of it that way.
mm-hmm. So like I said, I'm happy we chose that road. And I didn't do it for those reasons. It just didn't feel right to me
Sure.
at that point in time. And as a mom, you just kind of have to listen to what you feel. And there's 100 things I've done wrong, but I just kind of listened to my gut and did what I thought was best at the time.
Plus, as we know, there's no two alike. So what does work for one definitely
That's
isn't
why I say
for
I'm
another.
not against it. Like you do you. I am not an anti-ABA person. Like you do what is right for you and your child.
Right.
It just wasn't right for us.
So you did speech, you did OT, and what else?
Feeding.
Feeding. Okay. Is that through the OT?
It is.
Okay.
And if people ask me if there's one thing that I've done that they would start with, it would be feeding. I'm not kidding. doing all the research that we've done through our lives. I mean, we've done lots of different alternative paths. I remember when I was working with you is when we started going to Ann Arbor and seeing the holistic doctor and stuff. So we've done a lot of different paths that I went down, but feeding, being able to get him good, healthy food in his system would be my number one top priority. If anybody's diagnosed, that would be my number one. Start there. You have to get good, healthy nutrition into your child.
There's some like red dye thing.
There's so many. I call the food Pandora's box. I'm like, once you open
Absolutely.
it and you realize how poisoned our food is, you can't unknow this.
Yeah, so but that is a thing, right? I feel like I haven't heard about it lately, but I remember there was a time where it was all over.
Yeah, it's huge. The red dyes, the glutens, the glycemia, like all that stuff is, yeah, once you open it and you realize, wait, we're genetically modifying our seeds so that we can poison the plants. You can't like unknow that once you know
Right.
that.
Right.
So I always tell people, I'm like, you can go down that road, but just know, like, once you know it, you can't go back.
Just know there's nothing you can eat.
Exactly. We're off the Halflings Amish meat market at this point. But I do, I call it Pandora's box. Once you realize how poisoned our food is in this country.
Is he resource room now? I guess we should probably talk as if people listening who don't know. So is he full general education with resource room, or is he in a program based?
He is not, he doesn't have any special ed classes. He takes AP
Right.
advanced classes. He
Allison Lane, that's amazing.
It's crazy. Like going from this child who, like, I remember the first time he was in the middle of kindergarten before he ever actually told me something that I did not know. I will never forget it. I was driving Chris's truck, which I hate driving his truck because it's big. And he was like, and I'm like, how did you get a new library book today? And he was like, no library, no sub, no checkout.
Oh,
And I was like, oh my gosh, did you just tell me something I didn't know? Like that was the first time he had ever like verbally told me something that
yeah.
I didn't already know. So yeah, he didn't get a library book that day.
And
So
he
we
was
went
okay
from
with it.
that in kindergarten
Mhm.
to now, don't get me wrong, he has a one-on-one aid. He is
Okay.
extremely autistic. He cannot find his way around the building. He walks around with the headphones on. He gets confused by situations all the time. He doesn't know, I truly don't know how he just lives with all this intelligent knowledge that he has, but yet he does not know what to expect when he turns the corner.
Can't right. And he can't express it all.
Right. But no, when it comes to academics, he's extremely intelligent. He's actually taking an AP class as a sophomore.
Wow, good. That is amazing.
So he's a very smart boy. He can tell you all kinds of stuff. He goes down these rabbit holes his whole life of like learning about Greek gods or dinosaurs, and then he's got all this information. We went on a Disney cruise. He won trivia.
That is
He walked around with his medallion the whole time, his little gold medallion.
that is amazing. So was he ever in it with special ed services or no?
He did ECSE. So he
Okay,
had special ed preschool, then he went to kindergarten, and he still gets speech social work.
sure.
But he does not have any special ed classes. So like he doesn't even have like, he has what we call a caseload teacher because he doesn't have a special ed teacher he goes to.
Okay.
And they've done so good. We live in a great community where I don't know. And I mean, that is a road we need to go down on this podcast is like the judgment of people with autistic children.
Mhm.
But where we live, I just feel like we have been unbelievably blessed with people that just accept him. Of course, there's always going to be jerks that are going to say something or do something, but that's just life. Like last year, he got invited to like different seniors' graduation parties, and like everybody just kind of accepts him and takes him in. He's got my girlfriend's son and his girlfriend drive him to and from or drive him home from school every day, and they always look out for him and take care of him. So I could be like, oh, like a few weeks ago, their school got sent home early for a credible threat. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to get him, right? I'm at work and I have to get there and they're closing the school. One of my friend's sons texted me and was like, I already have Carson. I'll be dropping him off at home. And I'm just like, I love you.
Yes.
They just take care of him. They really do. He's in the choir. He's in the plays. Like he was in Mamma Mia last year. He's going to be in Sister Act this year. Carson does not look at autism as like a disability. He looks at it as like another descriptive word. Like I'm tall, I'm black, I'm skinny. He just looks at it, oh, he's autistic. He does not
Like,
think it's going to slow him down in any means. And he loves his autism. He'll tell you.
that is all due to you. And, you and I'm sure your husband, that's just something that if you're told a million times that you can't do something or that you're disabled in a way, then that's exactly what's going to happen. But if you have taught him and raised him that he is different, and we all are, then but he can still be successful in different areas. So that's amazing. That's all to you.
Well, I mean, he's just such a great kid. And my husband is so supportive. I
Yeah.
mean, don't get me wrong. Like, we've gone through hard times with this. Do not
Sure.
get me wrong. Like, this has not always been like roses, but there's like different stages of it. Like, I remember when Carson was younger, Chris would be like, I'm so glad you get him. I don't get him. He's like, it breaks my heart. I don't get him, but you do. And then like there'd be times where I'm like, oh my gosh, like things are never going to be okay. Like I'm so overwhelmed. And then my husband jumps in with the, dude, we're not world travelers. Like if we're taking his blocks to the tabletop bar up at the corner, we're good, you know? Like,
Right.
so we're just like, we've been very good at like going back and forth with who needs support and who doesn't. Like,
Now, were you teaching before?
I
Were you
love it.
a special ed teacher before
Yeah.
you had him?
Yep. I
Okay.
did 7 years in MOSI and I did 3 years as an aide in an SXI room before I even got pregnant.
I mean, just knowing my job, doing that all day and then coming home and you having the same types of struggles at home too,
Yeah.
girl, that's commendable. I mean,
Well, it
how
was
did you
too much when I was
mentally
in the
do
program.
that?
Like in the programs, it became too much. So that's
Yeah.
when I left the programs and became resource room. I taught kindergarten for a while and now I'm doing TC.
Okay.
So being in the programs all day and then coming home to this too, it did become a lot after a while.
I can't even imagine. I mean, that
Um,
just the mental
it
anguish
was
that,
it was a lot. And I definitely went through like a period of depression. I don't think I got it at the time, but that's what I was doing.
sure.
But looking back, I'm like, I was just depressed. Like I was just, it was too much everywhere I went.
Now, this is just again, I'm not pretending like I know what you go through, but as a professional doing the job that we do, it's so exhausting mentally sometimes. And coming home and then having to continue, there just wasn't a break for you.
Well, like
It's
Tracy, it's not even coming home. Like when you have an autistic child, it's all day. Like I'm at work, I'm getting text messages from his caseload, I'm getting text messages from his aide. I have to plan out like who's picking him up, who's doing this. The school went into lockdown the other day. His aide wasn't near him. Another teacher had to find him. Like it's not just when you come home, like it's
right.
all day long. I was with our psych the other day and she's like, what's wrong? Why is your face like that? I'm like, Carson had a half day, he didn't make it home. Like, like I don't know where he is. We have an Apple Watch that we follow him on, so we track him
Okay.
on his Apple Watch. And I'm like, oh, okay, wait, they must have stopped for food. Okay, all right, I still think it's okay. You know, I'm like, let me text the person who's driving him home and see what's going on. So it's not just come home. Like when you have a special needs child, it is all day, no matter where you are. You go to a wedding, you're either bringing him with you or you're worried about what he's doing at the time. Like it doesn't end.
Well, what do you do for yourself, or what does your husband do? Like, how do you find some time
I
to?
walk and I just started Pilates. I used to do Pilates and then I
So did
stopped.
I.
Now I love it again.
Yeah.
But I make time for myself to do those things that I know are going to make me feel better about myself. I like to read. So sometimes I'm just like, it's been a lot. I'm going to go finish up this book. Like,
Right.
may the odds be ever in your favor.
Yeah.
He's out. Sometimes you just need to walk away.
Right. You're like, see you, Chris. I need my time.
And Chris does his stuff too. Like he's run marathons. He likes to do different projects around the house. You know, he's a contract carpenter person, and he's like, "Well, I need to do this. I need to do that." Like, so he finds his own ways too. And we like to walk together. We like to hang out together. Yeah, he's definitely. It's funny. I do have to say, like, I've seen a lot of other people with special needs kids, and like, you either fight each other or you come together. And we definitely came together.
And that's huge because
So lucky. So lucky.
that's just and would think most times when that happens, it's because neither parties can handle or deal with the disability instead of it anything about them.
Right.
It's because they don't know how to cope with what's going on in their life.
And it's hard. And I don't want to make it out like, oh, it's always been easy for us. Like, no, we have had huge drag out fights over stuff where I'm like, we are spending money on this. This is important. And he's like, we can't spend money on every fad that comes for autism. Like huge fights that have like lasted a long time. Because we're both trying to do what's best, you
Right.
know?
What about insurance? What does insurance cover? I guess I should say.
Insurance does cover, we have good insurance where we work, you know,
Sure.
and they do cover a lot of like the traditional OT, PT, ABA feeding type stuff. I went down this long rabbit hole of, and I'm still on it, truthfully, of holistic healing. And I
Okay.
think it's amazing. We do a lot of organic diet, a lot of vitamins, a lot of supplements, that type of stuff, a lot of exercise, a lot of being outside in the sun. Type things. And Carson has a great therapist, and that is huge too. We love his therapist. He actually used to work with the START program a lot.
And so what grade is he in?
He's in 10th now.
10th grade. So what does life after high school look like?
I mean, again, I can't look too far ahead. We just did the whole special needs trust thing. I'm like, we have to go down this route. Like we could die in a car accident and then, you know, so we had to like learn about special needs trusts and how this works and who is going to get and what the difference is between guardianship and power of attorney and what, like, again, there's always
Okay.
a new road that you have to educate yourself on. And I'm like, I don't know. We found out, we decided to go the power of attorney route because again, Carson is a super intelligent person and we don't want to take his right to make his own decisions.
Hmm.
I also have to protect him
Right.
from other people that are going to be predators. He's not going to be able to log in and pay his bills every day and, you know, do those things. But I do feel he'll have a job one day and he feels he's going to be married and have kids, which is actually kind of heartbreaking to me because I don't know if I see that happening, but
That is heartbreaking.
he's going to be a dad. That's his big thing. If you ask him what he's going to do, he's going to be a dad.
And now is very verbal. It sounds
He
like he's
doesn't stop
verbal.
talking.
Okay.
He's an amazing writer. He actually, I always laugh because, you know, in the NWA, the language, he always scores like the 99th percentile in language. And I'm like, well, of course, because he knows the rules. Once you teach him the rules, he's got it. I'll be like, Carson, do I do a semicolon here? He's like, why would anybody do that? Because we don't know. Come help me.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I don't even know myself. Right.
I don't know. So,
So what do you think has been maybe from him being little and from him as of right now, a teenage boy, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges that you've had to face in both stages?
being little, it was definitely more safety. Like I was constantly worried, and he still gets lost and he's 15, but like he would just wander off. I remember one time we were up north and all of a sudden he was just missing and we were up with a whole group of friends and we're all looking for him. He was like, he decided to go for a run. He never told us he was going to go for a run.
Oh my,
So it's not like he's defiant. He just gets these ideas and he doesn't think and he goes and does them. We were at a barbecue on Memorial Day one time and all of a sudden he was just missing. And the whole place is looking. And I get in my car and I'm looking and I see our garage door open as we're a few blocks away. And I'm like instantly mad. And I'm walking in and I'm ready to just ream him a new one because obviously he came home. And I'm like, Carson. He's like, Mom, and he's so proud. He's like, I had a goal to be home by 8 at night, and I saw that it was 7:57. So I ran as fast as I could and I made it. And I'm like, don't you think I was worried about you? Like it never occurs to him. And he goes, well, now I feel like a monster. I'm like,
oh,
he just doesn't understand.
sure, sure,
So
sure.
what do you do? Punish him for not getting it? Like, that's not going to do anything. I can't make him understand. Like, but he gets so much better with time. I would tell everybody, I've said this to everybody I know. I do not count Carson out and he still shocks me. He just steps it up. I mean, I never thought he'd be in the Mamma Mia play,
For
but
sure.
they advertised it. It was his idea. He
Yeah.
was going to try out for it. And then this year he tried out, he wanted to try out for a speaking part. And I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's no way he can do this. Right. But then he comes home and I'm like, how did it go? He's like, I decided not to try out for the speaking part. And I'm like, okay, why? He's like, I think that maybe it would be too much for me.
Well, wow.
I
Good for
love
him.
that. So I don't tell him no on things and he still finds his way. I do think I want to say too about just Lance Cruz schools. I mean, my child has been here since he was 3 years old and these people support him out of this world. Of course, you're always going to have hiccups here or there with one person or another. But even when it comes down to it, like there is not a person in this district that is not like, we're on Team Carson. Like we want him to be successful. So,
And I think it's a great, which you probably, I could be wrong. Now I'm thinking of our experience as where we work,
mhm.
but for him to have a one-on-one aide, was that something you had to fight for?
It wasn't, and this is how it went down. It was kind of weird. He had a building aide in elementary. And then COVID shut down in 5th grade. And then all of a sudden he's a middle schooler. He's never even seen the middle school. And I'm like, this is never going to work. Like, what are we going to do? So the middle school doesn't have for building aides. So I was fighting for a building aide. And I wrote all of the reasons, right? We're like, we know you need data, right? Here's
Yes.
my data. Here's my data. Here's this. Like, if we could get a building aide. And the director came back to me with, I mean, super great, but she was like, I can't say one building needs an aide and the other two don't. Like, that's not a thing. But your case was so strong for an aide.
We know what we're doing.
And then he really needed it for 7th grade. 6th grade was different because it was like weird, like because it was coming back from COVID. So he had first, second, and third hour one day, fourth, fifth, and sixth hour the next day. Like it was just all very different. The lunches were staggered. There was only small amounts in the lunchroom. Like, so these things that were hard for him, it was an easy transition more than that. And then 7th grade went really, really bad. That was the worst year we ever had. It was horrible. He got like a new age. She didn't understand him. I didn't understand that was the problem. So I'm over here trying to switch medications and trying to do this. And then finally somebody did reach out to me and they were like, so do you know what's happening? And I'm like, no. Like, so then we got a new aide after that. And she's still with him from 7th grade till now. She loves him. I love her. We're so appreciative of her. And still that building aide he had in elementary, she still comes to all his like plays, or he was on the swim team. She comes to his swim team stuff. Like her and her husband show up.
That
So
is so, and that's what you wish for your, for your child, that somebody, somebody is consistently looking after them. And
yeah,
when they have new, there again, in our profession, sometimes you switch buildings every year. Sometimes, you just get a rapport with kids and then you're moved.
yeah.
So that is so huge. And probably one of the reasons why he's successful in school as he is, because he's got that consistency of somebody.
He does, and they know him, like they know how to deal with him. And don't get me wrong, there's times where they're like, okay, he's still upset. Can you talk to him? And I'm like, yes. But they know to reach out to me at that point. Like that's how well they know him.
Is he aggressive or no?
No, he's never aggressive. He did use some violent words not too long ago about a gym floor because he couldn't participate because he was wearing Crocs. So he wanted the gym floor to die and blah, blah, blah. And that turned into a whole thing, but he's not aggressive by any means. When he gets upset, he paces, he talks to himself, and he's large. He's 6'2". He's 173 pounds. He's this long, lengthy boy.
Yeah.
So he walks around and he'll pace to himself and he's got his headphones. And I think that can be very intimidating, at
Mhm.
times, like just having this large person talking to themselves and pacing around. But once you get to talk to him, like, he would never hurt anybody ever. But he's very aloof. He's extremely aloof. Like, I'll be like, oh, how was, so-and-so's, oh, I wish I would have asked. Like, what did you do if you didn't like, it just takes. We lost him at a ice festival in St. Clair, like a nighttime ice festival where they had like the fireworks and everything, to the point where we had to get the police involved. And then when we found him, he was just opening and closing a door to a pub. Milady?
Oh,
Like, what are you doing?
a lady?
Yep. Yep.
Well, he is your son, so
He's a talker.
I don't, I was gonna say, I don't doubt that for a second.
But he's super confident too. Like he has no problem telling people like, oh, well, that's probably because I have autism. Yeah, he's a cool kid.
Is, says that too. It's like, listen, you wanna look at me or wonder why I'm doing something? This is why.
And also I trained him from an early age if you anybody with a badge, if you ever see a badge, you have to tell them you have autism. Because I'm like fearful, and I'm not a person that's afraid of the police or anything, but I am fearful if you're coming upon this large person that you don't know what to expect, then they're going to be more apprehensive too, you know? And that's just always kind of been a fear of mine, is people not know what to expect with him.
Yeah, no, that's a great tip because they wouldn't know, and if he is having an issue and can't control himself or things like that, then that they would handle him differently.
And when he gets upset, he
Very
walks
important.
and he paces. He walks and he paces and he talks to himself. And his hands are flapping. And he's like, oh, and then we got that. And it looks very intimidating.
This may be a heavy question, but how have you, because a lot of time and energy and money and resources go towards Carson.
Mhm.
So how have you navigated making sure she has felt?
It's a huge thing for me in two aspects. Like, one, that she understands that she's just as important, right? And two, Carson is extremely well known in our community. There is nobody here that does not know Carson. He has been going to school here since he was 3. He is very out there. He joins things. He's not a kid that just sits at home and plays video games. So then I have that, she has to navigate that piece too, where
Yeah,
everybody's like, that's your brother. You know what I mean?
right.
And that's a big one for her. And as we talked a little bit before, she kind of has some anxiety of her own, you know? And I ask her a lot of times, and again, going back to that great community we live in, I'm like, do people ever like make comments about that's your brother? And she's like, no, why would they do that? You know? So like, she doesn't luckily have that piece of people saying things to her, but she still feels that she's very well known too, because this is her brother.
Hmm.
We went to the high school football game last night, and here's Carson, you know, making a big scene and go Lancers or go home. And he's, you know, like all excited. And here's Juliana with her middle school girlfriends, like, yeah.
Oh my God, that's my brother.
She does competition dance, which is so much. And if you know me, you know I'm not a dance mom, right? Yeah.
That's
But
not the picture I think of when I think of you as a dance mom.
way more like hippie-ish type,
Yeah.
right? Laid back. So, but it's been so great for us because he can't be a part of that. Like, that's something only me and her can do. He can't go backstage. He doesn't go out of town with us. He can't. So she gets that extra time with mom too.
Right.
So that's worked out for us too. And her 2 girlfriends are in dance, and I love their mothers. We're very close, like, love these women. So we have a dance carpool. We live like 3 streets, like bam, bam, bam. The girls are there and they accept Carson. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like I said, there's always going to be jerks that do things. Like, I had to call the school the other day. People were making fun of him because he was getting anxious in line because he wants a chicken sandwich. And they might be out of chicken sandwiches and the line's not going fast enough. So now he's getting anxious because he needs a chicken sandwich. And then, of course, there's some jerk that's like, who wants a chicken sandwich? Come cut in front of me,
Oh.
right? So then I have to contact the school and be like, can somebody like intervene here and do this? And they're great because they know, like, once you take Carson's anxiety away, he's going to be fine. Which,
Hmm.
by the way, I think is true for all autistic people. If you
Hmm.
take that anxiety piece away, they can learn and thrive. That's what I have learned between what I do for a living and being a mom of a child with autism. It's that anxiety piece. You have to find a way to take that away. But yeah, so I call and they figure that out. But for the most part, people also see him doing, like, people see somebody else being mean to him, and they'll step in like, what is wrong with you? I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah, that's great. That's really good. Yeah,
So
'cause that was one of my questions I know was about peers, and so you've touched on that a lot. And I think for the most part, just you, okay, now I can only talk really for elementary. I mean, I did teach middle school for 5 years, but I'm been so far out of it now. But if you start with them in elementary school, I think that group of kids who you went to elementary school with, I think they're always going to be those supportive ones who through middle
agree.
school, through high school, those are the kids who know you, and it's going to be those new ones that are just assholes sometimes.
And luckily, we've just gotten, like I said, I keep saying we're so lucky, we're so blessed, because we are.
Mhm.
Like, a lot of these kids, and then they'll put, like, we went up to the St. Hubert's Fair, which is like a fair in our community that's like a big deal, right? He's always got people up there that are like, Carson, you want to go on a ride with me? Like, Carson, you want to go over here with me? So even though it's just kind of him doing his thing, and he does have some other friends, like he does.
Mhm.
He went to homecoming with 2 girls and another guy, like no couples, but
Sure.
oh, they're very similar and they get along. And oh, he looked so handsome for homecoming. I don't know if you
Oh,
saw
I
him
bet he did.
pictures, but he looked so handsome.
I bet he did.
So we have those community too, and we have those parents that are with us too. And I mean, it's great. It really is. I worked homecoming because obviously I'd have to be there if he's there. And like all these kids would come out and be like, have you seen Carson in there dancing? You gotta go. I'm like, no, I'm gonna stay out here, Like, but everyone's coming out like, oh, he's so happy in there. I'm like, oh God.
That's so great though to see him flourish and,
Mhm.
be just your typical teenage kid,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
And
Um,
it's important for him to do these things. Like I couldn't
mhm,
imagine being like, no, you can't go to homecoming. Like he would be
right,
devastated.
right. What is something that you would like people to understand about autism that, they may not be aware of?
So I asked Carson this actually one time,
Yeah.
and I thought his answer was pretty cool. Um, he said that he wants people to know he likes his autism.
Okay.
And I thought that was kind of interesting. I was like, because it was Autism Awareness Month and we were talking about different stuff. And I'm like, but if there's one thing you wanted other people to know about it, he's like, I want people to know that I like my autism. I was like, really? I'm like, what do you like about it? He's like, well, it makes me smart. It makes me remember stuff. He's like, it makes me me.
That's great.
I mean, I thought that was pretty interesting.
That's a no, nod to you guys because you've accepted it. You've made him feel accepted and loved because of how he is and what he does. So,
And I tell people all the time, I'm like, oh, that is one thing I do want to touch on this though, is just the judgment. Like, one, it's been great for me as a person to just be like, I've had to figure out that it doesn't matter what other people think of me. Like, it just
right,
doesn't. Like you have no clue what we're going through. Um, but the judgment, the comments, like it is unbelievable the things that people think they're allowed to say to you. Even to this summer, we had somebody at our home, in my own home. It was a family member, right? We were having a party.
okay.
And Carson had done something that was a little off and he kind of looked over. And I was like, oh, he's autistic, right? Like just kind of, that's why he did that. And he's like, yeah, well, autism didn't exist back when we used to discipline our kids. I'm like, oh.
Oh, Lord.
And I just have this generic answer now where I'm like, oh, well, you know more than me. Like, I'm not debating somebody who really thinks that. Like, there's no way I can really get into a conversation where you think he's autistic because I don't
Discipline him.
discipline him. Okay, well, you obviously have more information than I do.
That's always been something that I admired about you is granted there are of course more severe cases and severe
Mhm.
kids with more severe things, but is that you haven't let it be an excuse for him to
Never. You
yes, and
still have to do the best you can in this world.
right. So that I've always admired that about you is like, listen, yeah, he's got autism, but guess what?
You still
He's
don't get to be a
still,
jerk.
yeah, you're still not gonna, yeah, be a jerk to somebody. You're still not
No.
gonna do that,
No.
So I've always, and that's again, like we said at the very beginning, is just being real. That's real. This is real life. And so
Well, and
we,
he uses it as an excuse sometimes, truthfully. He'll be like, well, that's because I'm autistic. I'm like, that's a reason, not an excuse. You have a reason, not an excuse.
yeah,
Like, figure it out.
I can't even imagine the judgment that goes on. And that was in your home. I can't imagine the judgment that goes on just out in the world.
Oh, and just the things like I remember the first time ever. And obviously this still bothers me because he was 18 months old. So this obviously still bothers me. He wasn't talking. It was actually a lady that works with us. I'm not going to share any names, but she works in our district. She's not a special ed person. But we were doing something for the union where we were passing out flyers and stuff, and I brought him in the stroller. And me and her were walking together, and she was like, I'm not kidding you, this really happened. She was like, does he talk like after a while? And I'm like, no, actually he does not. And this was like right when we were going through all of this. And then we went on and she's like, so I'm sorry, can I ask some more questions? And I was like, oh, girlfriend, it's literally all I think about. You want to talk about it? Let's talk about it.
I'd love to
This is
actually.
literally all I think about in my life. And this is what came out of her mouth. I could hear it in my voice. I could hear it in my mind. She's like, well, I mean, obviously, knowing the outcome of this, you'd never have more children. But if you were to, and I was just like, why would I not have more kids? I was just,
Uh, the the level of stupidity in
Mhm.
this world, I don't know why I'm still shocked by some of the things that
I don't
people
know how I
find
kept
okay to
walking and
say.
pushing the stroller because
I don't either.
it was like this like crack in my mind where I was like, that's how people think? Like I would never think
Right.
that way. So the fact that one, anybody would think that way, but two, you would say it out loud to the mom.
Right.
It's like,
Uh, all I can hope for is that, again, doing the job that we do, that I like to believe that I've raised my two kids, or raising my two kids with sympathy and empathy. I shouldn't say sympathy, empathy for children with special needs, or anybody that is different in any way, that we can hope that if we continue to do that, to raise kids who are like that, that
100%.
maybe people won't say such stupid
You just
shit.
accept everybody for who they are because we're all on a different journey.
Oh my
If
god, I
you
am
don't know what people have been through, just accept them.
by the time we're done here, I am going to be so pissed off at all the things that have happened.
You have like I don't even feel it anymore. I don't. I have this really good quote that I believe in, and my other people's opinion of me is none of my business. Keep
True.
it to yourself.
Yes.
It
Yes.
truly, you cannot like me, and that is fine. Just keep it to yourself. Like go to
Yes.
other people. It's none of my business.
I've learned
You
that.
haven't walked the road that we've walked.
No.
We have done so much like genetic testing and holistic this. And I mean, we did like brain training, the neurocore. Like, I mean, we've done everything you can. So for you to sit there and have a judgment to me on how my kid acts, like it means nothing to me because you have zero clue. It did take me a while to get there.
Absolutely. I mean, even in just my own personal life, it's like, listen, if I don't talk to you on the phone, or we don't converse ever, then you cannot talk bad about me, because you don't know me well enough to do so. You can you can go ahead and not like me. I am fine with that. But you can't pass judgment on something that I've done or said, until until you really know where that came from.
I mean, I like you, we like to laugh at inappropriate stuff, right? We
Yes.
like to make jokes about things that are uncomfortable. That's why we enjoy each other so much.
And it's so funny you say that, because that was the next thing out of my mouth, is people are going to listen to this and think they are laughing at a serious topic of autism, and they're just laughing. And I'm thinking, but this is how we handle things.
What else am I going to do? Like, am I going to be sad forever?
Right. And that's the whole reason of this podcast being called Laugh Through It All, because that is the one thing that has gotten me through absolutely anything in my life, is the fact that I have the ability to laugh at funerals, to laugh at weddings when I'm not supposed, everyone's quiet, and I will be the one has to make a joke. And without it, I would be a mess, and I can bet you would be too.
Life is hard. Like, it throws things. I was just talking, I remember who I was talking to. I was like, and it was like a younger person. I was like, honey, you're not going to ward off the heart of life. You can
Right.
make every great decision and you're going to get an autistic kid or
Mm.
you're going to get in a car accident. It's going to happen. So figure out how to deal with it. Like,
Yes, and I do. So it was so funny that you said that, because I thought this the whole time, is people are going to hear us laughing about something that maybe he's done, and they're going to think, "Oh my God, why are they
but
laughing?"
Tracy, he does the funniest stuff.
Yeah.
So you know how I told you he goes down these like rabbit holes of stuff. So he went down this law rabbit hole. So he owns two like college law books because he wants to know the law, right?
Yeah.
Probably one of the worst parenting decisions I've ever made because like one day Juliana was in my bed crying. She thought she had this part at dance and it wasn't hers and she was very sad. So we're laying in bed and she's crying and Carson comes in all anxious because if somebody's upset, he's anxious, right?
Sure.
Why is Juliana upset? And I'm like, honey, it's fine. She thought she had this part in dance. It's not her. She's coping. I feel we should sue for wrongful termination. Sue for wrongful termination. Nothing. No, but he's so funny. He got a lunch detention. And I was like, ooh, I got a text message. I'm like, oh, I wonder how he dealt with that, right? So I come home, I'm a little anxious. I'm like, hey, I heard you had a lunch detention. He's like, yes, and I will be suing for false imprisonment. I'm like, let me know how that goes.
But I do think, because of our job, like, we see so many things, and they really truly are funny.
They
I
are.
I still remember, I don't remember if I won't say the names, but I don't remember if you were there with me when I had the 2 brothers, and there again, the mom would come in, and she also her and her husband both had autism, but she was always so calm, very calm. And the one son, he was going to be having to go home that day, and he kept saying, "I just don't want to go to jail. I don't want to go to jail. I don't look good in orange," and all this other stuff. And the mom just very calmly said, "Well, I will come visit you if you're in jail. Don't worry." I
I'll be there.
And I thought, "Oh my goodness," but funny things do happen, and and there again, it's
I
you
mean, like
can't take
watching him
everything so damn serious and not see the
navigate this
humor in
like
it.
political stuff. Like he's so we're because like we watch a lot of sports in our home, right?
Yeah.
So you can't get through those commercials. Like, the world is ending. No matter who you're voting for, it doesn't matter. The world will end the opposite way.
It's
And I'm trying to have to like teach him like this isn't real. This isn't true, and he's like, well, what? And like it's just so many. Like I don't want to go down the political, so I can't give any like specific
right,
examples because I don't want to like do that. But
but it's so black and white for them.
a
There is
hundred
no
percent,
yeah,
where I have to try to teach him like, well, honey, like other people think different, and that's okay. Like it's like yeah, but then this person will do this. I'm like, no, no, like
yeah, that's not gonna happen.
like
Right,
yeah.
right.
So he needs to. It's so funny, and he's taking a government class right now. That's his AP class, is a government AP.
Okay.
Oh, I was trying to explain to his teacher. He's like, no, because I've been doing a lot of like, you can't talk about this outside of the home. Like, well,
Right.
so and so says this. I'm like, we don't live like that. We keep our political views in the house. Like, everywhere.
So one last question here for you is what advice would you give a parent? Because we both know how sometimes in the school setting, there's so many parents who don't want to accept the fact that their child has been diagnosed with autism.
I guess I have two pieces of advice that road. One would be I think a lot of people get that diagnosis and this mother bear comes out in them and they're gonna fight for their child. I just have to say, like, working with people is you get so much further than fighting. Like you still advocating for your kid without fighting every aspect of this. Like
Right.
try to listen, try to learn, try to be on board with these people that know how to help. But the other way I would go with it is whether or not you want the diagnosis or not, your child is still your child.
Hmm.
And if you're not accepting of who they are, it's kind of the same as not being accepting of them being gay or not being accepting of them being, like you want them to know you accept them. So whether they have the diagnosis or not, you still have to accept who they are. Parent who, and I don't know if you want to add this out or not, but we have one parent who wanted in the IEP that nobody will use the word autism around him.
Oh, I've had that before also.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, but wait a minute, why are we not teaching them who they are? And it's okay that this is who they are.
We had one parent who didn't want any information sent home that had the word autism in it at all. And it's like, and so it's just going to go away,
Right? Like he still is who he is.
right? And the
And
thing is that ignoring those facts, the amount of resources that that child is going to miss out on, all because the mom or the dad doesn't want that label, that label.
they know, Carson knows. Like, I'll be like, oh my gosh, did this bother you? He's like, no, probably not because of my autism.
Yeah.
Okay, like he knows there's something different that probably didn't bother me because of this.
Hmm.
Or like, well, why would they be so upset about that? He's like, well, mom, you know that I like to know what's going to happen. Carson does not like to watch new movies. He wants to rewatch movies because he gets anxious not knowing what's going to happen. But it's fun to watch a movie and know what's going to happen.
Hmm.
So, and he'll like tell you, like, imagine not like justifying that to him. Imagine being like, that's not right. You have to watch new ones.
Absolute. God, that's such a
Justify
good
who
point.
he is. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like give him validation that this is who you are. I mean, and he'll still go. Like he went and watched Beetlejuice with us. Like he went, But there are times like the Hocus Pocus, the second Hocus Pocus that came out a few years ago. It started with the Salem witch trials, and he was like, "I'm out of here." He's like, "And this is ridiculous. You want me to watch about the burning of women?" And yeah, like,
Actually, I do have one. I thought that was gonna be my last one. I have one more. Where could or where do you think parents could look for those outside resources? Did you go through like the OT, the feeding? Did you do all of that through your pediatrician?
My pediatrician recommended speech. So then
Okay.
knowing that we know a lot of people that work in this field, I started reaching out to where's the best speech therapist? Where's this? And then when we found a really good one, I followed her down the feeding route. And then we went down the OT route. So I just kind of followed people. I found people that I trusted. We had a psychiatrist who prescribed meds. There's a hard one. Give your child medication. That is the most hardest thing I've ever done, is to give my child a pill from a pharmaceutical company. It is the best decision I made. He needed that for his anxiety. So hard. But we found this psychiatrist, came recommended. I did not feel comfortable with this person. I would ask questions and they would just look at me like, I don't have to explain this to you.
Mm.
And I went to other ones. Now I love our psychiatrists. Like, you just keep finding people that work for you. There's other people out there that you will vibe with. And I'm not saying this first psychiatrist was this horrible person. I'm sure he was great at his job. But as a mom, I need to be able to ask questions and hear that to feel comfortable. And if that's not who you are, I need to find somebody else. Like,
I am a huge advocate for that part because I've said it in quite a few other podcasts, is that, as much as I believe in therapy, you've got to keep going until you find one that meshes with you.
yeah,
Just going to one and you don't like them, it's so easy to say, well,
that
this
didn't
is
work.
gonna work for me. Like,
Mhm.
no. You don't, once you find someone that works for you and works, and you mesh with and they communicate the way you need to be communicated with, it is life-changing.
Yeah, it is. I'm a big advocate for therapy too. I do therapy
Yes.
every other week.
Yep. Same.
Um, and again, it has a lot to do with this whole aspect of my life. I'm still trying to navigate this road. Where's he gonna go
Hmm.
after high school? I mean, he's gonna go to Macomb. My husband teaches at Macomb Community College, so he's
Oh,
gonna
okay.
go there. Yeah. And he's gonna commute and that's gonna be fine, but is he gonna have a license? Like, we got him a golf cart a few years ago because I want him practicing being on the road and looking around. Still, he's 15 and a half. There is no way he can take driver's training.
Right.
But it took us almost 5 years to get him to ride a bike.
Hmm.
Because just to get him to concentrate on, well, I have to do this and I have to look here and I have to do that. Like, it
Yeah,
just
more than
takes
one
him
thing at a time.
longer to learn these things.
Mm.
Playing cards, we play a lot of cards. He's finally now at 15 joining in and being like, oh, wait, I think this goes with that. It's like, it just takes him a little longer to get there, but he eventually does. But again, we live in a society where you can Uber anywhere.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
like these are not roadblocks. You
Hmm.
just have to find a way to work through them.
Exactly. I love
And
it.
Carson, I think, and his therapist, I love when his therapist says this, and he says it all the time, and it always makes me feel so good when he does. But he's like, Carson is bringing autism into the mainstream. Like, that's who he is. Like,
That's
he is
amazing.
so
That's
good
amazing.
for their community, the way he brings autism mainstream.
Right. I love it. Well, I'm so happy that you did this with me.
I
I
am too.
feel it's a very important topic to talk about any type of challenges that,
Too much fun. It's fine.
yes. So thanks for joining me.
Thank you
Thanks
for
for
having me. And again, thank you for doing this because it is such an important topic right now. And my experience is going to be different from other experiences. But like, even knowing, like, I belong in so many different forums, just even watching, like, oh, that's a good idea. I never would have thought about that. Or, oh, like, oh, I would never do that that way. Like, like,
right.
it's
And
important to
what
talk
works
about.
for you
Mhm.
isn't going to work for somebody else's child, for sure. So, all right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. As always, do better, expect better, and be better. And as Allison has been, shown us today, laugh through it all. It is the best medicine. Thank you, everybody. Join me next week. Don't forget to check out my merch at debmotivational.myshopify.com.